Welcome and welcome back to this video on Kantian ethics, reason, duty, and the dignity of persons. Immanuel Kant lived and worked in Königsberg, a city immersed in the Enlightenment's intellectual transformations. He sought to reconcile the divide between rationalism, which emphasized innate reason, and empiricism, which grounded knowledge in experience. Kant believed that morality, like knowledge, must rest on principles that are necessary and universal, known not by observation, but by reason alone. Reacting to moral sentimentalists like David Hume, Kant argued that feelings such as sympathy or happiness cannot serve as the foundation of moral law since they vary from person to person. Likewise, he rejected consequentialism's focus on outcomes since results lie beyond our control. What remains within our power is the will, the capacity to choose and act according to principles. Morality, therefore, depends not on what we achieve, but on how and why we act. At the heart of Kantian ethics lies the concept of the good will. Kant writes, in the groundwork of the metaphysics of morals, nothing can possibly be conceived in the world or even out of it which can be called good without qualification, except a good will. The good will is the will that acts purely from duty, motivated by reverence for moral law rather than by inclination, emotion, or self-interest. An action's moral worth is determined by its intention, not its consequences. A person who helps others out of genuine respect for moral duty rather than for praise or reward acts with the true moral worth. So if you're doing something out of the goodwill, you're doing the right thing because it's the right thing and for no other reason and with no other motive and no other intent. For Kant, morality is grounded in rationality. Every rational being can recognize moral law through reason. Reason ensures that ethical principles apply universally and not just to one culture or to one emotion. When moral action flows from reason, it reflects our shared capacity for logical thought and moral consistency. Kant defines autonomy as the capacity of rational agents to legislate moral law for themselves. True freedom is not doing whatever one wants, but acting according to reason. When we act from duty, we are most free. Acting from desires or social pressures is a kind of enslavement to inclination. Moral worth arises only when we choose to follow the moral law because we recognize its rational necessity. Kant's main moral rule is called the categorical imperative, and the categorical imperative expresses unconditional moral duty. There are two different formulations of the categorical imperative that we'll be using throughout this class. First, the principle of universalizability tests whether our actions could be laws for everyone, if we can universalize our actions. Second, the principle of humanity requires that we treat every person as an end in themselves and never as a mere means to an end, never as a tool to get something. Together, these two formulations demand consistency, fairness, and respect for human dignity in all moral reasoning. Because rational beings can act autonomously, they possess inherent dignity. To treat someone merely as a means to an end through lying, manipulation, or exploitation violates their humanity. Kant's ethics therefore protect equality and human rights. Respecting human dignity means acknowledging every person's capacity for moral reasoning and freedom. Kantian ethics provides a clear and rigorous way to evaluate moral actions. So, when faced with a moral decision, we apply the categorical imperative. Kant instructs us to identify our maxim, the principle behind what we intend to do, and test it by asking two questions. First, could this maxim be universalized without contradiction? Second, does this action respect all persons as ends in themselves? Only if both conditions are met is the act morally right. So when we're actually applying Kantian ethics, when we're applying the categorical imperative, let's take a look at this first example, lying. If you want to lie, first, you have to actually look at the motive or intent behind it. But we'll hold off on that until we talk about the good will. In this, we're just looking at the categorical imperative on those two tests. So, if we're asking if you should lie, first, we have to apply the principle of universalizability. That's asking, could this be universalized without contradiction? So I'm saying, if I want to lie, I have to be able to say that every person all over the world, all the time, every day, should take that action. So every person all over the world, all the time, every day, should lie. And then I have to ask, what type of world is that? Well, if you have a world where everybody's constantly lying to each other, that's going to create a world where nothing can actually get done. If no one is telling the truth, you're going to have contracts that fail, laws fail, it would just turn into chaos, and that's not going to advance society, and that's not a rational world in which to live, according to Kant. Next, when you apply that test of the principle of humanity, you have to ask, is this an action that is going to respect a person and treat them as an end in themselves, or does it treat them as a mere means to an end? When we lie to other people, what we do is we take away their rationality and their autonomy in a situation by taking away all of the information. We're misleading them. We're leaving something out. And if we don't have all of the information, we can't be expected to make a rational decision. If we can't make rational decisions, we can't exercise our autonomy. Doing all of that, using a person as a mere means to an end, disrespects people. And it takes away our human dignity. So, lying fails both tests of Kant's categorical imperative. And you would go through that same process when you think about any action that you want to take. You would do the same thing with promise keeping. Promise keeping upholds rational trust and it upholds human dignity. So you have a situation where it's the exact opposite of lying. And you can do this throughout the rest of the semester. You'll have to do this whenever you're applying Kantian ethics. You'll definitely have to do it on your paper coming up. But in an upcoming video, there's a video just on applying the categorical imperatives. And if you have any questions about applying the categorical imperative, please send me an email and let me know, and I can help you with it. Sometimes Kant seems a little tricky at first, but once you get a hang of his language and how the system works, I think it's pretty clear. So Kantian ethics is one of the most demanding moral theories that we will approach in this class, but I think it's also one of the most inspiring moral theories. It holds us to a very, very high level of ethics. Some might say too high, but I think that high standard is a good thing for us to aim for. Kantian ethics calls for integrity, consistency, and respect for the rational autonomy of all persons. By grounding morality in reason instead of inclination or consequences, Kant offers a vision of ethics that transcends culture and circumstances. To act morally is to act from duty, guided by the good will, and to honor the dignity inherent in every rational being. And now our reflection questions. What makes the good will uniquely moral in Kant's view? How do reason and autonomy connect to moral responsibility? Why might acting from emotion or self-interest fail to have moral worth? All right, y'all, that's all for now. If you're interested in more videos about Kantian ethics, take a look at the videos posted on our channel. Also, if you're interested in more videos about philosophy and ethics, you'll find those on the channel as well. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for putting up with the animal noises in the background. Y'all have a great day.